Have you ever watched children color? I used to think that kids have trouble staying within the lines because of their developing motor skills. But it's actually more than that. Children, when drawing or coloring, see a different, bigger picture than any of us adults can imagine. And kids don't care about the lines. As we grow up, we are often forced or taught to stay within the lines that somebody else drew for us. And I'm not just talking about coloring. We often find ourselves within these artificial lines, and we lose sight of our own big picture. And yet your life is just like a picture in the making. You exist for a reason, and that reason is to make the world a more beautiful place in your own way. And art and creativity is your conductor to your own masterpiece. And the only way you can truly honor the masterpiece of your life is to draw your own lines. I sat across the desk from one of my favorite clients, David, as we worked together on a financial forecast. And as his accountant, I disagreed with his decision to increase creative marketing budget for that year. Accountants don't start businesses, honey. Visionaries do, David said to me. And I thought, whatever, dude. I'm an accountant for crying out loud. Business is what I do. And then my inner voice jumped in like, is it now? Don't you have a practice as opposed to a business? And you know, we accountants oftentimes have huge egos, and I wasn't an exception. And I typically don't listen to my inner voice, but this time, darn it, it was right. We professionals, doctors, lawyers, accountants, architects, engineers, therapists, call what we do often a practice. But what's the difference? In a practice, you essentially sell time for money. Even if you have support staff like doctor's office, you still sell time for money. In a business, it's a different mindset. A business, in it, you use other resources other than your own time to make a profit. You use technology, efficiencies, systems, processes, and other people's time to make a profit. And when David said accountants don't start businesses, it dawned on me that all this time, about at that point 10 years into my profession, the profession that I loved, I've been coloring inside the lines. I was so stuck in my left brain, my logical, the linear thinking, that I lost sight of my own big picture. And that's when it became clear to me that in order for my life to mean something, in order for my life to matter, I needed to draw my own lines. I needed to dip into my right brain, my creative side, and become a visionary. Because if I don't, who actually remembers tax accountants when they're gone? Nobody. Except, maybe, for their often neglected families. That's the nature of the beast. I hope that my family will remember me, but because I make it a priority, but is that it for me, for my life? You know, I've spent the last 18 years working with businesses big and small. I've worked with some of the most courageous leaders, and some, not so much. I've seen decisions being made, and I've seen the consequences of those decisions. And I've been privy to the most intimate part of it all, finances. And I can now tell you down to the month when a business will run out of money or close its doors. And when I hear of that happening, when friends tell me of a business shutting down or running out of money or whatever it is, my heart breaks because I know how personal business really is. And business is personal. People don't start businesses just for the sake of having a business. We start businesses so that we can have a better life for us, our families, and make the world a little better. And in that moment with David, it became clear to me how so many of my creative clients, which is the majority of them, were just as stuck in their vision as I was stuck in the spreadsheets. And that's when I decided that I want the masterpiece of my life to change how people start, run, and grow their businesses. I wrote a book on it a few years ago. I do it every day with my clients in the one-on-one work. And I continue to spread this message here with you. And in order for your life, For you to write your story, to paint your masterpiece, you'll need your creative and logical sides working together as a whole to make it right. And you could do this for any vision, even a slimy one. My best friend's daughter, Amelia, was about 10 when she started her slime business. She would make this borax-smelling goo, shoot some videos, and post on Instagram. A couple of her mom friends bought some slime, and that's it. Crickets. Amelia was looking for answers, and she came across this other girl, just like her, who was doing the same exact thing, making slime and videos, and yet she was selling and bragging about it. So Amelia was upset. I mean, who wouldn't be? And so she asked my friend, her mom, to help. My friend found was that this other girl had a mom who dealt with all the legal, all the pricing, the orders, and the sales funnels. All that this girl had to do was make slime and videos. What she realized was that without the girl, there'd be no slime. Or without the mom, there'd be no business. Entrepreneurship is a whole brain craft. And first, you need the lines to give you direction, to build your vision. But you can't actually do anything with it if you don't know how to fill those lines in. And how do you know? Your right brain sees the vision, and your left brain knows how to make it real. Entrepreneurship is a craft, which means it's a system, it's a process that anyone can learn, including you. And you need a whole brain approach, the slime and the sales funnels to make it work. Those lines that you draw, that's the direction you want to go, your vision. And just as a pane by number tells you which color to fill in each section, your numbers will tell you how to fill in your color and make your masterpiece a real thing, step by step. But why is it important? Why is it critical? A business is a basic unit of the society. Profit motive is what drives economies across the globe. The US tax code, for example, is geared towards small businesses. My own tax advisory business, not a practice, doesn't work with people who don't have a business because there's nothing I can do for them in terms of saving money on tax. And it's different from what I saw growing up. I was born in the Soviet Union and I grew up in Belarus. And Belarus is a developing country, and as any developing country, it has nationalized means of production, which means that the government owns factories and resources, which also means that most people work for the government, which means that there's no middle class, which means that every entrepreneurial motive or attempt is highly pursued, taxed, audited, and stripped of all profit. And to show you how personal it is, my parents, both medical doctors, could not put protein on the table every day, could not afford to, working 2 full-time jobs, saving lives with a child in free daycare and free healthcare. Small business is one of the reasons that the US became an economic superpower decades and decades ago. Small business is the biggest employer in the US, not big corporations, mom and pop shops. Small businesses lift up families, like your local pizzeria owner being able to afford to visit their family across the country several times a year. Small businesses lift up communities, like a bagel place nearby donating their leftover bagels every day to the library where seniors and immigrants can come get food. And by making a profit, small business lifts up economies and creates jobs. And yet, we have a tragedy on our hands. US Bureau of Labor Statistics says that 50% of businesses fail within just 5 years. 5 years! And that's 1 in 2 every other business. That cool cafe you'll have around the corner may not be here next year. That startup that was working on a rare cancer cure may not fake it long enough to make it. That's how personal business is. Business paints a masterpiece that makes our lives better and more beautiful. And it starts with a vision, but becomes something with numbers. Maybe you haven't considered having a business yet. Maybe you've been told to stick to a career. Here's what you should know. Entrepreneurship is the way to be truly free in life. to build the life you want. And nobody starts a business to fail. At least I hope not. And yet 50% fail within just 5 years. You can change that, even if you don't have a business. You can beat the statistic, and here's how. Give up forever. These two most common excuses that I've seen in my life and career. Number one is, I'm not good at math. Two is, I'm not creative enough, or I'm not creative at all. Because if you don't, you will be coloring inside someone else's lines your whole life, guaranteed. And if you have a vision, or had a vision, or a calling, you have an obligation to go after it. You have an obligation to make it, to beat the statistic. Because what if you're the person who will discover the Alzheimer's cure? What if you're the person that turns salt water into drinking water? What if you are the person who finds alternative fuel that's actually good for the environment? What if you're that? David, he was right. Accountants don't start businesses, as painful as it is to admit. But David, starting out, had a vision. His dream was to build a brand, a clothing brand, that would make his queer community feel seen and empowered. But being stuck in his business several times on the journey, he realized that he could not have the quality of life and the authenticity of his entrepreneur experience if he only kept his creative hat on. David says, at some point, the numbers have to build your business. Otherwise, your business will fall apart. And even during the pandemic, this client had his priorities straight: family, team, community. We got to work on the numbers right away before any government help was ever announced, because it matters. And David said to me, a mere tax accountant, Tatiana, you have a family, and if you need money, just tell me. That's leadership, and that's honoring your creative calling. David drew his own lines, but needed numbers to complete his masterpiece. Because numbers give you the power to paint the picture you want. Numbers give you the power to paint the picture you want. And you don't become someone like David overnight. You don't even become you overnight. And yet it's closer than you think, and starts with a decision to honor your calling and learn the craft. How can you get started? Consider something I call a high dive technique. When I was about 17, it was my first trip abroad and my first time at a water park. There weren't any where I grew up, so you can just imagine what I did there. It was awesome. Bumped my head a few times, which probably explains a few things, but it was awesome. And then I noticed this diving tower next to a pretty deep swimming pool. It looks pretty doable off the ground, so I run up the stairs. I wait my turn, and as I step onto the board, I make a few steps, and the board starts shaking. And now I can see the water underneath, and it's freaking high. And I think, what an idiot you are for doing this. And so as I kind of move back and turn back to leave, there's people behind me from my school. So I think, okay, if I turn back now, the whole school is going to know that I chickened out and laugh at me my whole life. And so I turn back to the board, and I take a breath. And I remember my math teacher always said, math saves lives. And I think, okay, this board right here, somebody built it, somebody already ran the numbers. So I shouldn't die, right? And for the first time, at the age of 17, for the first time of many times in my life, I dared to draw my own lines. And numbers just gave me the power to do it. And so I jumped. And I felt free. Entrepreneurship is the way to be free in life, like that cannonball I was flying into the water. But when you're standing at the edge of this diving board of your business, or starting a business, or making decisions, there is nobody else to run the numbers. It's just you. And only you know if it's safe enough to jump. How do you know? First, treat it as a craft and learn it because you can. Second, draw your own lines. Find your direction and build your vision. And third, know your numbers to fill in the colors to make your masterpiece a real thing. And what if nobody could force you ever again into their lines and mess with your big picture? Entrepreneurship is a whole brain craft. And now you know. Thank you.